Hi everyone, thanks for coming to see me. My name's Katie Edwards and I research the function and the influence of the Bible in contemporary popular culture. I'm from the Sheffield Institute for Interdisciplinary Biblical Studies. Now, just to get things clear before I start, I'm not especially interested in promoting the Bible for promoting the Bible's sake. I'm interested in promoting a critical approach to the Bible, and by critical I don't mean negative, I mean analytical. I mean looking at which texts are used and why. How are they being used? What are they saying about our culture and our social relationships? Far more important than just being able to quote a biblical text is being able to read closely and critically, whether that is the Bible or it's the function of the Bible. Now, I speak to lots of people about my work. I often have to go and do classes in school. I do lots of public lectures. And people are often astonished that the Bible is used at all in popular culture. It is prevalent in film, advertising, pop music, TV, even couture fashion. Now, people say to me when I speak to them, and particularly school kids will say, it's an ancient text, it's of no relevance now, it's nothing to do with me or my life, it's only relevant for religious groups and people who believe in it as scripture. But actually, of course, it's everywhere. The Bible is everywhere. And that's whether you believe it or not, whether you believe it is a religious text or not, and indeed whether you like it or not. The Bible is so deeply embedded in our culture, we just can't get away from it. So then, why use it and what does it do? Well, for example, over the last few years, we've been awash with all things biblical. So we've had, you can see behind me, we've had a number of biblical epics. So there's been like a kind of resurgence of biblical epics, not seen since the 1950s. So we've had the much-hyped release of Noah, which was the first of a spate of Bible films to be released around Christian festivals. Then we had Exodus, Gods and Kings at Christmas 2014. Then we had Risen this Easter, which wasn't great to be honest. And then we had of Kings and Prophets, which was billed as the biblical Game of Thrones. And then we've had a deluge of media following all these things, talking about the accuracy according to the biblical text. And then, of course, we've got the actual Game of Thrones. And that's been used in biblical themes and stories since the first series, including most famously the resurrection of Jon Snow in season 6. Now, just have a little Google of that and you'll see Jon Snow is Jesus, Jon Snow Bible. It's not just me, I promise, not just me. Biblical stories, characters and themes are used in popular culture because these are shared stories. The stories that most people are going to know about. They're very likely to know about them. And because most people are likely to know about them, they enable advertisers, brands, celebrities to communicate quite complex ideas in one image really quickly. We're going to get them. So if you think, for example, about how you read a magazine, you don't read every single page. You don't sit and stare at the advertising images. You go straight through, you go like that, straight through it. So advertisers have got to be clever. They've got to get an image that you're going to understand within less than a second, just a turn of a page. The Bible, biblical characters allow that to happen. I'll give you this. You can tell I've written a book about Eve, so I've got quite a lot of images. Slightly obsessed, some might say, but I think that's underrated, frankly. I don't think it's odd. So, brands and celebrities use the Bible when they want a recognisable image to communicate ideas about, for example, how we should look and behave as women and men. So it's communicating ideals to us. They use this image. So we can see that, for example, Adam and Eve are used loads, absolutely loads in popular culture. You pick up a glossy women's magazine, Vogue, Elle, Cosmopolitan even, you will find a biblical image in there because they're used so much. So, for example, who would guess it, but this is actually an advert selling handbags. Now, how is it selling handbags? It's not got any on there. Well, it's selling handbags because it's trying to sell to you ideas about gender instead. It's trying to sell to you ideas about how you need to be an attractive woman, how you need to be the kind of most attractive woman, and you do that through the constant buying of consumer items. There's also something weird that happens in Adam and Eve imagery in particular. So you'll notice that Eve, well, she tends to be a supermodel, to be honest. So this is Alessandra Ambrosio, and she's a Victoria's Secret model normally, and that is an ex-boyfriend of Madonna's. I don't even know his name, so whatever, but he's famous for that. Now you can see that Eve often, well, she always looks back at the camera, she looks back at the viewer. Adam, however, does not look back at the viewer. Look, you can see with little Sylvester there, is also looking off camera, is in licensed withdrawal. Licensed withdrawal means, it's a term that was coined by a sociologist called Irving Goffman, who said that he collected loads and loads of images from advertising and said that you can see that genders are portrayed very differently. There's a pattern of representation. And the person who's in licensed withdrawal, the person who's looking off into the distance, or sometimes with Adam, is so in love with Eve because she's so gorgeous that he can't take his eyes off her, which is normally the effect of the perfume or lipstick or whatever is supposed to be bought. That person doesn't have the highest social status. And that person doesn't have responsibility for whatever action is happening in the picture. So in these adverts, which are almost always in women's magazines, you can see that it's supposed to be a woman who has the highest social status. How does she get the highest social status? She gets it by being the most attractive. How does she become the most attractive? She buys a load of stuff all the time to make sure that she is. This is what the Bible's used for. It's kind of weird, isn't it, when you look at it? But also, I'll just take you on a really quick tour. Look, this is so exciting. Now this image, one of the very, very few, I've got about 2,000 of these images. Sado, I've got a database, I know. You're jealous, aren't you? I know. I've got about 2,000 images, only 15 are where Eve is a woman of colour. So these are also telling us something about race and what ideal femininity is. So we've got Cindy Crawford, Monica Bellucci, Laura Stone, always celebrities that are doing it. Now, if we move to, even Sky Sports have done it. Now, finally, I just want to point something out. Also, it's often mentioned to me that when the Bible's used, no one really knows it's the Bible. So, you can use the Bible, but actually people don't recognise it as the Bible. No one knows the Bible these days. No one cares about the Bible these days. Au contraire, my friends, au contraire. If you look, for example, at this one, the one underneath, the lowest image, that is for a ribs restaurant. It's gross, isn't it? I know. But if you can see, on Adam, he's got this big kind of scar on his rib. If you don't know the story of Genesis, that is one weird image. That's a weird, don't get me wrong, it's selling ribs, it's a weird image anyway. I don't know why that would work. But do you see what I mean? You've got to get the joke, you've got to know something about the text to get the joke. So I've taken you on a whistle-stop tour through the Bible in popular culture. I hope that I've managed to communicate in my very few minutes just a little bit about how it's used and how important it is to think about how it's used and why it's used. Thank you very much, everyone.